Our journey begins in East Asia. Did you know that people in Korea are considered to smell the best on Earth? Of course, Koreans and Japanese sweat, just like you and me, but their body odor is much less noticeable. Another interesting fact, their earwax is always dry. This is thanks to a special version of the ABCC11 gene, which makes their earwax dry and their sweat practically odorless. Scientists believe this genetic mutation appeared in Asian populations around 50,000 years ago. Because of this, deodorants aren't very popular in countries like Korea. They do sell them, but the selection is much smaller than in other parts of the world. And if you ever visit Korea, make sure to shower often. Their noses are incredibly sensitive. Natural red hair isn't just a sign of having no soul, it's also extremely rare. Only about 2% of the world's population has it. But the most interesting part isn't just the rarity. The genes responsible for red hair also affect pain sensitivity. Redheads actually need about 20% more anesthesia than people with other hair colors. Because of this, they're twice as likely to cancel a dentist appointment out of fear of pain. Luckily, Mother Nature decided to throw them a small bonus. Studies show that redheads are less sensitive to pain caused by electric shocks. So, thanks, I guess. By the way, what's your hair color? Write it in the comments. We'll run a little social experiment to see which hair color is most curious about the world. Did you know that playing Tetris can actually help prevent post-traumatic stress disorder? There's a critical window between 20 minutes and 6 hours after a traumatic event, when it's possible to influence how certain memories are formed. Tetris is perfect for this because it replaces stressful memories with other visual patterns. Basically, it helps overwrite unprocessed sensory trauma. This method was tested on emergency room patients who had just experienced serious car accidents. And after just 20 minutes of playing, their symptoms improved significantly. So next time you find yourself playing Tetris for hours, you're not just slacking off. You're coping with adult life stress, totally healthy. You know who doesn't have to worry about growing old? Lobsters. Yep, those little troublemakers never actually age. First, let's quickly explain how aging works in humans. Every time our cells divide, the telomeres, the protective tips of our chromosomes, get shorter and weaker. Eventually, the cells can't divide anymore. And that's when aging kicks in. But lobsters? These beautiful, juicy, delicious creatures don't have that problem. They produce a special enzyme called telomerase, which keeps their telomeres long and healthy forever. Their cells literally don't age. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, there's a catch. Lobsters have their skeletons on the outside, and as they grow, their exoskeleton eventually gets too small. Kind of like how my jeans don't fit after winter. To keep up, lobsters have to shed their shells and grow new ones, a process that burns a ton of energy. At a certain point, they just can't eat enough calories to grow a bigger shell, like, say, the size of Snoop Dogg's mansion. And that's how they die. Not from old age, but from exhaustion. Or, because someone decided they looked a little too tasty. By the way, did you know that 1 out of every 100 men in the US is a psychopath? But who exactly are psychopaths, and how can you tell them apart from normal people like you and me? Psychopaths tend to share some key traits. They usually feel no guilt, they rarely show any remorse, and they can be cold and cruel, whether it's toward people or animals. No matter what happens, they almost never express real emotions and seem completely indifferent to everything around them. As for women, between 0.3% and 0.7% of adult women in the US are believed to be psychopaths too. Here's a fun fact. Psychopaths tend to steer conversations toward 3 main topics: food, money, and sex. And if you think psychopaths are just creepy old guys living in broken-down cabins deep in the woods, think again. Psychopathic traits are actually most common among CEOs, lawyers, TV and radio hosts, sales managers, and even surgeons. Basically, the more serious the job, the higher the odds you're dealing with a full-blown psychopath. And of course, psychopaths are also much more common among prison inmates. Good thing we're not one of them. Here's another crazy fact about the US. Did you know there are more pet tigers living in America than there are wild tigers in the entire world? Today, there are only about 4,000 wild tigers left globally. Meanwhile, Americans keep over 7,000 tigers in backyards, apartments, and even doghouses. America doesn't just attract adventurers, it apparently attracts tigers too. Since 1990, there have been hundreds of dangerous incidents involving these adorable big cats. They've attacked, and even eaten, people, ripping off all sorts of body parts. And you'd think after all that Americans might lose interest. Nope, tigers actually became even more popular. In some states, it's easier to buy a tiger than to adopt a dog from a shelter. For every single person on Earth, there are about 2.5 million ants. Think about that for a second. If you gathered all the ants on the planet and all the people, their combined weight would be roughly the same. Ants live on every continent except Antarctica, and everywhere they go, they do incredibly important work. They build ecosystems, spread seeds, loosen the soil, and speed up the decomposition of plants. You probably have no idea just how much the world depends on them. But lately, scientists have noticed worrying signs. Ant populations are starting to decline. That's why researchers are racing to learn as much as they can about these tiny creatures. One of the key things they're studying is how many ants actually exist. According to the latest research, there are around 20 quadrillion ants on Earth. And together, they weigh about 12 megatons, roughly the weight of two Great Pyramids of Giza.